I lied. In case you haven't seen the last video I'll ever post to YouTube, don't worry about that. Anyways, how many abilities do you need to beat Silksong? And no, the thumbnail wasn't lying. I managed to beat the game with only 5% game completion. Stick along to find out how. Warning, in case it wasn't obvious, this video will contain major spoilers for Acts 1 and 2. Much of the full map will be shown, though I will do my best to only show what is needed for low percent routing. After getting all PlayStation achievements for Silksong, I decided to set out and answer this question to the best of my abilities. In Hollow Knight, game completion was awarded for a number of different things, such as killing bosses and picking up charms. The record for low percent true ending is 23%, and for any ending, 11%. However, in Silksong, the 100% game completion stat only cares about abilities or upgrades Hornet gets. This means we can go much, much lower in percent. I'll be focusing on no major glitches for this route, so no nonsensical sequence breaking. So let's take a look at what is needed to beat the game. Working backwards, the Lace 2 fight gives Hornet a Silk Heart. That's 1%. In order to get to Lace 2, you need the threefold melody, which requires the Needle-In ability you get from saving Bellheart. That's another 1%. In order to get the melody in High Halls and Cogwarts, you need the Harpoon. That's another 1%. In order to get the Harpoon, you most likely have to give Drifter's Cloak for this room. That's another... Wait, what? Okay, so apparently Drifter's Cloak and even Fade Down Cloak, the double jump, don't count towards game completion. That'll make our lives much easier. And lastly, probably the most important ability, not just in Silksong but also in Hollow Knight, is the wall climb, the Cling Grip. While not hard locking progression, I just don't see how this ability could be skipped, especially since in order to get the needle in, there's a lot of wall platforming you need to do. Even in Hollow Knight, a game notorious for its skips, the Mantis Claw is a required item. Well, technically Mantis Claw isn't needed. Check this video out if you're curious. So, if the Needle-In, the Cling Grip, the Claw Line, and 1 Silk Heart are all absolutely necessary, that puts the total completion at 4%. So what is that last percent that puts the route at 5%? Well, stay along for the journey and you will find out. After Hornet crashes out from her 7 years of waiting in the Silksong Insane Asylum, we are met with our first piece of tech, down pogoing to go slightly faster. Since we will not be getting dash, you better get used to this movement as you're going to be seeing it a lot. We ignore the first bench like any good speedrunner, don't mind me fumbling about in Moss Grotto, defeat the Moss Mother, and pass out completely. We yabble to the Chapel Lady, you can tell this is not a speedrun because the text isn't Chinese, and pass by Bone Bottom. Ooh, would you look at that, a simple key for 500 rosaries. This is actually important because Lace blocks the way to Farfields, and you need the dash to reach her, hence why we are avoiding her. But the locked door below her lets you skip her entirely through a caveat you'll see shortly. We grind up rosaries from every rock and string we see. God bless Map Genie, the real ones for making such a detailed map this early in Silksong's life. Using the speedrun skip, we get to Chakra quickly, but we visit the Bell Beast in its silken cage, and oh wait, how are we even supposed to get to Deep Docks without freeing her? The only other routes involve an impossibly large lava room and a locked door. It would seem like we would be stuck in the mirror without picking up 2 abilities, the Silk Spear to free the Bell Beast, and the Silk Heart from defeating her. Well, there is this other door in Wormways that also requires a simple key. So, screw the Silk Spear, Hornet doesn't need that, let's get that key. Surprisingly, you get a lot of rosaries simply from the environment, so this made my life easier. Being sure to bench by chakra, I tumbled down to Bone Bottom and bought the simple key and bench warped back up. Let's see how far this will take the route, and it leads to a dead end only possible with the dash ability. Begrudgingly, I admitted defeat. So I figured I had to take the normal route. I got the Silk Spear, freed Aira, and got the Silk Card. Now I will just simply head over to Deep Docks. I made my way right to before Lace, dropped right down to fight some coal miners, benched as always, and approached the Deep Dock doors. Again, this seemed impossible, but I had heard it was possible to skip dash, so I knew there was some way to get across. Miserably failing the jump and dying to the lava, I saw my cocoon spawn slightly over the pit. Very sneaky, Team Cherry. I know you intended for this to be possible. Since you can pogo your own cocoon, that should give you plenty of height to make the jump. After a few attempts, I made the jump using a trick called heel stalling. Basically, since healing in the air slows you down to a stop, it can kind of preserve your momentum for a brief second and delay your fall, giving you just enough distance to cross the gap. This combined with the cocoon established 2 new techs for our journey. And then it hit me. Why didn't I try to see if the cocoon jump would work in wormways? I had tried heel stalling, but neglected to test it with a cocoon. Restarting the run, I made my way past the Silk Spear again, grinded up more rosaries, cracked open the door, dodged the worms, and sacrificed Hornet to the spikes. Hopefully a useful cocoon will spawn, and why does it have to spawn down there? I guess the Bell Beastless run is cooked. Wait, that was very close to working. This spitter guy was pissing me off, so I decided to save time by killing him. That is, if I hadn't died twice to it like a dumbass. After arduous attempts and combining the 2 pieces of tech that I have learned, I barely made the ledge grab. Finally, some progress. Expertly dodging the worms, I found it surprisingly easy to continue upwards without any abilities. Thank God I can open this lever to avoid doing that cocoon skip. God damn it, that's useless without a wall clean, never mind. Going right, I found my next predicament. This jump is designed for dash. No way I can make that. But there is this ledge here that is much closer. If I can just heel stall and... Oops. Wait, that worked? Guess the hitbox for respawning is generous. However, again, I find myself with another barely out of reach jump, this time with no way to get full silk. Then I remembered, the game refuses to respawn you on that platform above the spikes, so as long as I don't touch either end of the spike pit, I can always jump into the spikes to respawn back up here on this ledge. Now I just need to carefully acquire more silk on this breakable platform by hitting this infinite wormway silk generator. Voila! Now I can make this jump and meet Chakra, who's been encouraging me for the last 10 minutes with her song. Continuing forward, I found no troubles. Reaching the big pit, I had assumed you couldn't climb to Shellwood, but apparently you can. Well, except for these two precarious enemy pogos I had to painstakingly line up and not miss, because if I do, I fall back to Bone Bottom and have to redo all the skips over again, which totally did not happen to me. Twice. Getting to Shellwood without abilities was incredible, but just how much farther can I go? I immediately farmed Rosary to secure my place in Shellwood by buying this bench. Is what I would say if I was smart. Instead, I gunned it for Cling Grip and died like a moron, resetting me back to Bone Bottom. Using my brain for once, I acquired my bench when I got back and headed for Cling Grip. Instead of dealing with Sister Splinter and whatever trickery platform I would need to do, I opted to Garama, an enemy over here in this room, using a speedrunner skip to get up on this ledge and continue the platforming section, only to realize that this next part is very hard to do without dash. In an attempt to lure the plant enemy to a better spot for pogoing, I died stupidly, only to realize it was actually a genius plan to cocoon pogo up here for an easier time. Then I made it to this room right before the Cling Grip. I figured this room would be easy, but I quickly realized it was designed for dashing. Instead of going up the normal route, I carefully pogoed up here, only to make no progress. Many attempts later, I figured out I needed to heel stall carefully over this annoying Gallia enemy's attack to make it to the ledge. Again confronted with more difficult platforming, I pogoed and reached Cling Grip at long last with 0 other abilities. Now I could grab Needlin as well. Heading over to Widow, I surprisingly first tried her with only having Cling Grip. This route is going swimmingly. Then the consequences of my diabolical plan were coming back to hurt me. Clearly, Team Cherry did not intend for that Wormways routing, as this Silk Memory literally soft locks your game as you can't complete the platforming with only Cling Grip. No healing is possible here as well, so no heal stalling, and you can't quit out the game to make any progress. So reverting my save back to when I picked up Cling Grip, I needed a new plan to get Drifter's Cloak. There's still that simple key route that's possible, so I headed back down to the Marrow, only to remember that Cling Grip does not even slightly help me get to the east side. At this point, I began to think the route was cooked. But then I started thinking about this path to the Marrow. You need to be cursed, which requires this Twisting Bud and Bilewater Nevermind that's past both the Citadel and the Harpoon. So that's a no-go. But then I remembered this route through Bellheart. I had mistakenly thought this room was closed until you saved Bellheart, but apparently it's not. Joyous with this discovery, I bench-warped back to Shellwood and headed for... Wait, I need another key. There is a key in Sinner's Road you get from defeating a big bug in this area, but getting there proved to be very, very difficult. Interestingly enough, the boss Morwing doesn't spawn here in Greymoor when you enter from the Bellheart side. Fun fact, quitting the game on the haunted Bellheart bench plays this tied up sequence when you return. The routing through Greymoor surprisingly wasn't too difficult. It is interesting how Morwing doesn't spawn if you come from Bellheart into Greymoor. I guess that's another skip for Morwing. Also, it's interesting how if you skip the first Lace fight, she still shows up in Sinner's Road to greet you. but she doesn't end up fighting you here. I know this could also occur through the blasted steps passageway. Arriving at Sinner's Road, the game starts expecting you to use dashes for the platforming here, but all of it was possible with only wall climb. I had never realized just how hard these Sinner Road obstacles would be to parkour across without dash, especially these spiky balls. God, they infuriate me. Surviving the muckworms, I made it to this long roomway. Normally you have to dash up top these platforms to get to the other side, but unfortunately I have no horizontal movement. So I had to painstakingly move these muckworms in position so I could pogo off of them and just barely make the ledge climb. After some light work parkour, I made it across into this long vertical room where my destination awaits. Ugh, not again. I died so many pointless times trying to get back to where I was. After making it back to this room, I accidentally killed this flying enemy, which I would soon realize is needed for me to be able to make the parkour. So I made my way down to the Silk Eater bench and respawned the enemies. The enemies here nearly gave me a stroke, but slowly and surely I made it to the room and performed a tricky pogo off of this flying enemy and headed up. Vanquishing this beast and collecting the key, I had all that was needed. I descended into the Bellway room and went right through the secret wall. In case you were wondering, you can still unlock these stations, but you can't interact with them. No fast travel for me, I guess. Navigating the tunnels, I, at long last, made it to the right side of the marrow without freeing Eira. Kinda saddens me, but such sacrifices are needed for low percent. Also, this door is locked from this side in case you were wondering what happens if you approach Eira from the right. Repeating the deep dock skip, I crawled my way through the lava platforming and reached Farfields. Also, only afterwards did I realize I could have just fought Lace normally instead of getting a key to go beneath her. I hadn't thought that Cling Grip would be able to make this jump possible, but apparently it does. Shout out to the speedrunner who's done a 5% speedrun of the entire game. It's truly impressive. Anyways, the platforming was pretty easy. Dealing with the enemies without dash was not. Next, I got to collect 25 spines to hand them to the seamstress to turn into the Drifter's Cloak. Collecting the spines proved trivial, and I acquired Drifter's Cloak with only Cling Grip to my name. Putting down the fourth course, I blasted my way up to Greymore. Wait, since when is there an enemy here? You can destroy this door mechanism so you don't have to pay 30 every single time you go in, which is pretty nice, even though I don't actually need to be in here. Now I could attempt Widow again and finally have a way to complete the parkour for the Needlein. Even after getting Drifter's Cloak and entering Greymore the normal way, Moorwing still doesn't spawn here. Very interesting. Thank God I unlocked that shortcut. Of course I would die on my second attempt. And there it is. I can confirm that this memory is beatable with just the Drifter's Cloak and Cling Grip. After viewing the tragic past of the Weavers being controlled, I rang the Dead by Daylight bell and carried on with my newfound Needlein powers. In order to get to the Citadel, you normally fight the last judge. And while every bell you need to ring is easy to get, one of those bells is the one locked behind the Bell Beast, which necessitates 2% game completion. So that was crossed off. Speedrunners use the mist and fight Phantom, so I thought that was a perfect plan. Unfortunately, this meant I had to go back to Sinner's Road. This time, though, Drifter's Cloak should make it a cakewalk. Breaking through this wall, I entered the mist and find the butterflies, only to realize I can't needle him. No matter how much I spam the ability, enter different rooms, reload my save, I just simply can't needle him. But wait, didn't I needle in right after Widow? Does dying or reloading your save break the game, considering how few abilities I have? I reloaded my autosave to Drifter's Cloak and fought Widow again, only to remember that Needlin uses Silk. I mean, who even thinks of that? Because I have no Silk Heart, I don't have any Silk to use, meaning I need to hit enemies in order to be capable of playing a song.
Wow, I haven't stubbed my toe in 5 months, I said with Joyce. I was then shot 57 times.
Returning to the mist, I kept some spare silk and followed the butterflies for the first 2 rooms, headed left or right for the guaranteed hallway, followed them again for 1 room, and headed right for the guaranteed solve. Thank you, Blue SR. If you come from Bilewater, by the way, this last transition is a guaranteed left. Heading into the organ, I benched, opened up the shortcut, and confronted Phantom. This should be easy, I thought. Boy, was I wrong. At first, it was just a skill issue, not being used to having no dash. Then her second phase started, and I was not prepared. Normally these steam attacks are easy to dodge, but without dash, there is very little room for error. Eventually, I discovered you can kind of pogo this attack. Not quite a parry, but it still gives you a few invincibility frames to get out of the way or even avoid damage entirely. Winning this fight by parrying, I realized this is also gonna give you a silk skill. Immediately, I quit out to think on how to avoid this. The fight can't end unless you parry the final blow, so I needed another way to the Citadel. At first, I backsaved to get kidnapped in Hunter's March. After dying a few times and forgetting where to go, I finally made it to the room where the warden fly spawns. He was being a bit difficult trying to cage me, but eventually he succeeded, and Hornet was sent away to prison. A huge difficulty I immediately found here was that I have no cloak anymore. This meant that I couldn't use Drifter's cloak to close any gaps that normally could be done with dash, so I was afraid this may be impossible. Picking up the key of Indolent, I unlocked a few doors and shortcuts, and made it to this enemy arena. Using the spikes to my advantage, I defeated the enemies only to find that they were now at my disadvantage. Since I have no needle, I can't pogo off these spikes, so I have to rely purely on my jumping capabilities. But without a dash the game normally expects you to have, these jumps become nearly impossible. However, by dying to the spikes up above, I'm able to spawn a cocoon just high enough that I can pogo off of and heel stall to make the gap just barely possible. There was also this other really difficult ledge jump, but since it was pretty safe, I just threw myself at it a few times until I could manage the ledge climb. Jumping down to these flies to retrieve my items, with Hornet being badass, the flies being jackass, and me being dumbass, I picked up the key of Heretic and made my way out of the slab, only to realize something terrifying. The Citadel passage is blocked from the side. Funny enough, this actually was a soft lock because the only other way to leave the slab is through the bellway, which I could not use. If only Mount Fae connected to the sands of Karak. Regardless, I had to think of something else. Bileswater route is just impossible. Putrid Ducks is closed off. Wisp Thicket seems promising, though it requires a double jump. This person proved that the Beast Crest can momentum storage jump up to the Wisp Thicket, but that requires 2%, the Beast Crest and the Nail skill, and it ends up not even working due to the transition just being disabled because Team Cherry hates us. Just kidding, Team Cherry, your work has been astronomically beautiful. As I was editing this video, someone did prove you can get Faydown Cloak in Act 1, and apparently that's the trigger for allowing the Wisp Thicket entrance to work. However, getting to Faydown Cloak in Act 1 requires both the Silk Dash skill as well as the regular Dash skill, both of which add 1% each. So this isn't super viable for low percent, but it is an interesting theoretical, because it would skip both Cross Stitch and potentially Needle-In. But more on that later. Admitting defeat, for real this time, I went back to my autosave after getting cross-stitch. I'm not sure why that save didn't get wiped when I went to a previous autosave, but I was thankful regardless. This would end up being that 1% that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. It's funny because up until this point, I didn't even have a crest tab in my menu. But with a way to the Citadel unlocked, it was time to acquire the Harpoon. Theoretically, the Harpoon is just a better dash, at least for platforming, but I would soon realize this was not the case. I climbed my way to Songclave and grabbed the white key needed for the Harpoon. By the way, yes, the white key is available here in Songclave for the first time you enter this room. Otherwise, it gets swooped up by the vendor. Passing through the Citadel rooms, I descended down the nightmarish White Ward and looped around the underworks to finally reach the Harpoon. It's insane how well Drifter's Cloak can carry a dashless route. I harpooned up to this enemy gauntlet and strategically died, only to realize something mortifying. I respawned with no silk. and with no silk heart nor enemies to hit, I was stuck here for all eternity. This existential dilemma would cause Hornet to immediately jump into the lava. Of course, a cocoon would save me, and oh my god, Team Cherry is actually trolling me. Dying in this corner allowed me to resilk my supply and harpoon back to my now long-lost 200 rosaries. It's fine. It's not like I really needed.
You've reached your limit on talking. Shut the fuck up.
Back to the Citadel, I began to worry about the High Halls section being impossible without a silk heart, so I headed there first to confront my demons. I charged up my silk meter and started to rise. Thankfully, you don't need to do too much harpooning at once, so the various enemies spread out through high halls, refilling my silk, actually made this possible to do. Unlocking the shortcut, I headed to the Cogwork Dancers. After bawling my eyes out, I rushed back to collect the melody in high halls. Finally, I was making good progress. Afraid to continue that gauntlet, I decided to get the Cogworks melody first. Parkour in this section, without dash, helped me to reenact the Sailor's Mouth SpongeBob episode. But it was all doable, even with limited harpoons. Anyways, I unlocked the room to Trouble and troubled all over it, I unlocked the room to Trouble and troubled all over him, making sure not to pick up his mirror. It's funny that I can pick up his red quill, since I never bought one from Chakra. Team Cherry really did spend 7 years handcrafting this masterpiece of a game. But continuing in my efforts to spite Team Cherry, I got the palm cylinder and learned the Vault Keeper's melody. All that was left to do was fighting at this point. I was considering getting Garmund and Zaza to help me in the high halls, but I quickly learned he doesn't show until you complete the Sentinel quest, which requires double jump and gives you a tool. Heading back to high halls, I painfully threw myself at this arena. No upgrades and being without dash made it so hard to punish enemies or avoid being punished. But I started to take advantage of that cross-stitch skill I had. I really do dread this being skippable as well. Side note, I only realized afterwards that I could have gotten Fey Down Cloak, the double jump, without increasing game completion percentage, which would have made the platforming in Gauntlets easier. Oh well. Finally, I was triumphant and finished the threefold melody, benching before lace because I knew this would be tough. Lace 2 took me a lot of attempts, as I was used to dashing a lot whenever I fought her normally. And just like Phantom, her second phase torched my booty cheeks because it was difficult to escape in time. Nearly an hour later, and I managed to defeat her, being rewarded by an unpassable silk heart. And finally, after all these hours of blood, sweat, and tears, I finally made it to Grandmother Silk with only 5% game completion. It was truly a sight to behold. And I want to take a quick note to thank the various members of the Silksong community for pointing me in the right direction to beat this game. Seriously, without guides, I'd probably still be stuck on Act 2 in my first playthrough. Anyways, in honor of my struggles thus far, of all the hours I've poured into ramming my head against impossible walls, this is what happened. Thank you all for sticking around with me on this journey. I hope to see this category get pushed forward, especially since this wasn't a valid speedrun, just a fun theoretical experiment I wanted to test. I want to take some time to credit these other Silksong players, as even though I discovered this 5% route by myself 2 weeks ago. What? I'm bad at editing. This was my first time working with DaVinci Resolve, great software by the way, and this is my biggest video yet. Anyways, these other runners, including Skurry, still deserve credit, especially since my routing was, well, let's say not very efficient. Also, what the hell has been going on over here? People have gotten Faydown Cloak in Act 1? They've even beaten the game without Needlin? How? That doesn't even make any sense. I told you the Hollow Knight community was batshit insane. I had figured though that the threefold melodies cutscenes didn't actually require the Needlin, but it's cool to see this actually being pulled off. Unfortunately though, those discoveries do not help with low percent, as avoiding Needlin and cross stitch requires getting a bunch of tools as well as the Bell Beast. Very interesting though for least bosses. All this means is that Mantis Claw, Lace 2 Silkheart, and Harpoon are all required abilities. But proving Drifter's Cloak can be skipped doesn't seem likely. I'd also be interested in seeing a run avoiding Crest and Silk skills altogether if that's possible. But enough about any ending, who cares? What about low percent true ending? What's required for that? The answer is... I don't know. Or do I? Stay tuned for my next video where I'll be attempting low percent true ending. And as always, thanks for watching.